Okay, as always, it's Andrew's fault. We're starting late. Really sorry about this late start, but we do have some interesting discussions for you today. You can see I'm in this TV, and Andrew is in that TV. Oh, I've pointed the right way as well. I should have practiced that before. So, Andrew, say hi. Don't be shy. He's not saying hi. We can't hear him.
Hey all, good evening. I'm not sure why anything. You can't hear me?
No, it's
I hope you
working
can.
now. I think it's a bit of a delay.
Okay, cool. We haven't started late anyway. We said 6 o'clock was the start. It's exactly 6 o'clock. We're spot on time.
He said 5 o'clock.
But yeah, we figured with lots of people starting to work from home more and more that it would be great to have a little chat about working from home, a few things that we've thought of over the years and ways to try and make things easier. And then in the background, having a dog is a really helpful thing to working from home.
Well, I think it just shows like the authenticity, right? It shows that, I'm in a lovely, quiet kind of house at the moment. Everybody's out. But then there are times when there are people home. It shows it's authentic. It shows that you might be on a call or you might be on the BBC doing a really important call and your kids come in. But you just got to own it. And I think I've been on some calls like today. And people have just said, "Oh, my kids just come in," and they kind of grab their kids, put them on the lap, and just continue the call. I think that's fine. You just got to own it. So, yeah, I think when people like the guy on that BBC, he kind of panicked and tried to ignore them. He was sitting there like this. You see no kids here, and I was like, no, you don't need to be like that. Just own it. I think that just shows people who have done it more and more. I think at the beginning of live streaming or when I first started doing remote work like 6 years ago, I would have panicked like that. And now it is what it is. We get our work done, and that's the important part. And yeah, I think that's the important part. So don't worry about dog barking in the background, kids running in, knocking your green screen over, breaking your iMac, and all those sorts of things. It's fine. It's standard.
There's also that element as well of, I think when you're working from home, you're still thinking, oh, I've got people at work watching me. They're going to judge me based on how this goes. But you've got to bear in mind as well that everyone understands when you're at home, it's a different environment you're in. You're a bit more relaxed, probably. Yes, you have family around. That's just a real world example. The real world isn't full of a perfect setup where everything is silent around you. It would be a pretty boring world if that was the case, right? I mean, what would you spend your life doing if you're just constantly surrounded by silence and nothing going on? I think that's a situation that some people are probably experiencing, though, working from home, is that you live at home on your own, perhaps, and it is just a really quiet thing and it's something you're not used to. So I think in practice, in some respects, it can be harder working from home when you are alone a lot, whereas whilst the distractions of having kids and dogs can get a little frustrating at times when it gets quite full on occasions, a lot of the time that's not a problem. But it's nice to have that break and interaction with other things going on around you.
That's really true. I think there's I guess two types of people, or maybe a lot more, but sorry, more extremes. One with a busy house, one with a really quiet house because you're alone. I suppose like I'm in the middle, so my wife works. We don't have kids yet, so I'm not alone. But then I don't have the excitement of a kind of interesting household, as it were. I don't know how to say it. Kind of I say crazy, but that sounds harsh. So I guess I'm in the middle, soon to be going a bit more crazy with the kids and all the rest, and all that sort of fun. But yeah, being alone, I guess that is difficult right now. With what did you tell me, Andrew? That pubs are closing, bars are closing, gyms are closing. So if you're home alone, you must get quite lonely. Which is where again live streams I think are really important. I'm interested to hear people watching. Let us know what your situation is. Have you worked from home before? Like, have you worked remotely before, or is this new? And are you home alone, or do you have a housemate, family? Whatever it is. Be interesting to see. I mean, I love
Also,
working from home. I love my home
what
office.
for those that are working from home now, what challenges are you finding getting into doing it? I mean, we could talk a little bit perhaps about the things that we first had to do when we were working from home, because I certainly, the first time I was working from home, I wasn't in this house. I didn't have a space for myself as such. It was more, I was in a corner in the living room with a desk and so forth. And it was a different environment when I first started working from home. And slowly I built things up and worked my way into having an environment that lets me work from home with a greater flexibility. So I suppose
That's
it's
true.
good to talk a little bit about that experience as well. What do you go through? What do you what happens when you first start working from home, and how do you come to sort of change your lifestyle around that? Go on, you talk first a bit about yours, Eddie. What was your first experience when you started working from home? And I don't mean just for one day, but when you first had to do like a whole week from home, what was that kind of thought for you?
Trying to have to wind back like 6 years or so. Um, I'm trying to think where I lived. I did have a dedicated office, but it was the conservatory, which was very hot in the summer and very cold in the winter. So it kind of wasn't always great. It was great kind of spring and autumn. So yeah, I had a dedicated space, but it wasn't comfortable. I think now I'm really comfortable, which I think is the two extremes. So I think you've got to get yourself a space that is kind of your workspace. I had that. I got to always get up really early, and I'm straight at the computer. And I go, I'll just do one thing before I have breakfast, and then before I know it, it's like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, lunchtime. I haven't even had breakfast yet, and I think I started off really bad. And then same with dinner. I'll be 5 minutes, I'll be there in dinner in 5 minutes, kind of like it was 7, 8, 9, and I only had lunch like at 5 or something. So I think it's good to set boundaries a bit as well. And then things got better, right? I had better equipment at home, I had better chair at home, better room at home, and then I wanted to work from home more and more. And I mean, if I show you what I've built up to now, so now I have a dedicated office, and if I nudge out the way and put this kind of up here, this is actually my back camera, so it's not a picture, it's actually kind of real. And it's Andrew can't see that, but basically I've got next to me in the TV screen another screen that's got my back camera. And I've built up to this, what I call my command center, and I love it. It's got the right temperature, the comfortable chair, the great desk, the great screens, great computers, great cameras, everything. But it's taken me probably 6 years to build up to that. And I don't think that's something you can do. It's always something going to be evolving. So now I'm talking to Andrew about getting a dedicated streaming PC so we can have higher quality streams and all the rest, because it's something I want to do more and more. So I think it's just the more you work from home, the more comfortable you make it, and then the more you want to work from home. And it's just a bit like of anything. When you get better at something, you want to do it more, and then you get better because you're doing it more. And it's just like my wife goes to the gym, and recently she started going more. And I said, "Why are you going more?" And she says, "Well, because I noticed I noticed an improvement, so I want to go more." And because you notice an improvement, it just goes a bit more crazier. Anyway, enough from me. Let's hear from Andrew. Let me move my back camera out of the way so it's not distracting. Let me try and give that a nudge. If I can time it right and nudge it out the way, I've got to push the right way. Let me see. No, wrong way. That way. This is going to go terribly. Okay, I'll just get rid of it. It's fine. It's gone. Andrew.
Yeah, okay, cool. So, yeah, working from home. I think when I started, we were in a rented bungalow at the time when I started working from home. So that's why I was sort of in the living room. I had a small desk, a computer. At the time, initially it just had one screen. So I was stuck with one screen, computer whirring away next to me. And because it was in the living room, it used to get lots of stuff just chucked on the side when I wasn't in the sort of guarding it as such. So almost every time I came to sit at the desk, first thing was clear the space, because for me, I think having a clear space clears your mind a bit more and you're able to focus better. So regardless of whether people were in the house or not, that was a difficult challenge, to just keep a clear space and a clear mind. And occasionally when you come to the desk and there was loads of stuff that had been put on there, it was a bit frustrating, a bit stressful just before you get started, sort of getting a bit stressed, kind of get yourself set up. So that was certainly difficult and certainly challenging when I first started. I think one of the first things I then did was get myself a second screen to work with, so that I could be more efficient. So I think 2 screens for your computer, quite a high priority for me. Maybe not so much for certain people, depends on what you're doing. Obviously, sort of doing software and trying to be productive with being able to see kind of information on one side and whatever I was writing on the other side. That was very helpful. It's something that I did have in the office, and most people in the office had 2 screens to work with. So I'd certainly say from an efficiency perspective, get yourself 2 monitors if you're working. If you have a laptop, get yourself an external screen, plug that into your laptop, use both of them. Laptops, certainly when you're working from home, are quite helpful for those times when you do need to go into the office. So that was probably the next thing I got when I was working from home, was not just having a computer that was decent, that I'd been using anyway when I was at home, to get a laptop so that as I moved between places, it allowed me the opportunity as well to go to cafes and things. So when I was at home and I was stuck in the corner of the room, there were days where I just thought, you know what, I just want to get out of this space because it's not necessarily the most conducive to getting things done, and go down to a cafe. Again, current situation a point. And Eddie says there's just been an announcement in the UK, for those in the UK, saying that all pubs, restaurants, cafes after this evening are going to be closed for an unknown amount of time. It'd be interesting to see how many of those places adhere to that. Obviously, the government says that licensing laws stipulate they have to do this when they get told to, but we shall see what happens in that space. But that certainly makes things more difficult again, for that whole social interaction and that sort of being isolated. Because again, whilst it's nice to be at home with your family and your kids and everything, once you've done that for a week or 2 weeks on the trot, I think again you start to want other interactions as well. Don't get me wrong, love my kids, my wife, all the rest, but at the same time, when you're stuck with them constantly and you've been there sort of together for sort of 10, 15 years already, it's nice to have a little bit of space to go do your own thing from time to time. So one of the things I do now, I suppose, on that side is I try to go out and sort of play golf once a week or so, just to sort of get myself away from the house, see a few other people. And it's one of the few things at the moment that actually they're still saying is a fairly safe thing to be doing in the current spectrum of things, because you're keeping a distance from people, you're not close together, you're outdoors, so anything that might happen is less likely to spread. So that's certainly been quite a good thing to do more recently. And as Eddie says, over the years, so if I go away from that kind of where it was 8 or so years ago when I started working from home, for the last 4 years, I've had this house where I've got effectively what should be the dining room, but I've kitted it all up as my office. I can't show you the screens like Eddie, but what I could do is I could drop the green screen behind me for a moment. You can see it behind me. If I bring this down, you should see the rest of the room up here, which I have a nice sofa, I have an exercise bike, I've got a little coffee table where I can just chill out on the side, read a magazine or something. Obviously I've got a few covers and things, but it's a nice big space. I can walk around in the space, and it's not a small confined corner of a room anymore. Let me put that back up so we can talk. And then obviously on the desk, I've got a nice wide desk. I mean, it's effectively a dining room table what I've got on the desk here. So it's, gosh, 1.5 meters wide, 2 nice big screens. I've got the decent mic on there, lighting. I don't have a big TV on the wall yet, but that is something that I'm working my way towards, one step at a time. But,
nice. Yeah, I was just gonna ask the audience some questions. So now we kind of covered what we've done and what we've got now and so forth. I was quite keen. So I know we've got Venkatesh on there. Venkatesh, thanks for joining. You're always so supportive. Love having you on here. It's great because you're always engaging. I'm really interested to know, people watching, and Venkatesh, please also reply. Are people working from home now because of what's happening? And is it the first time they work from home, or have they worked from home before? I don't mean the odd day, but maybe like 3 or 4 days a week. Have they worked consistently from home before, or is this completely new to them? So I'm just quite interested to see who we've got on and their experience. So last time I spoke to Venkatesh, I think he goes to the office most days. But Venkatesh, correct me if I'm wrong. It'd be interesting to know, what people are thinking. And so while people are thinking and writing that, we should probably just cover some of those tips. So, from our many years of working remotely, we should have a dedicated space and make it comfortable. And if you've got a laptop, it's great. Like Andrew says, you can move around the house, find somewhere quieter or warmer or colder, depending on kind of how your house is. Or even apart from the times now, you could go out you go in the garden, go to a coffee shop, and you could or meet up with someone and work at a coffee shop with them, or go to a place where there's hot desk. Obviously now that part is not possible. So that's definitely a good tip. Second screen, Andrew mentioned that, and I took that probably to the nth degree, as in I eventually got a second screen, and now I've got too many screens. Literally got too many screens.
Yeah, when I've got everything going, I have 4 screens on the go now. So it's quite crazy when you've got everything going. You're the same with the big TV, right? 4 screens on the go. So you sort of work your way up to it. And I think the useful thing as well, even if you're not a coder, where I think it's quite useful. There's someone doing software where you can see your code on one screen and the output of it on the other. What you can also do is, like Eddie and I spend a lot of time talking during the day. I don't just mean having a general natter about stuff. I mean, talking about work. So he can be on one screen and we can be talking, whilst on the other screen, I'm getting on with what's happening as well. So I think that helps answer the next tip, which is you need to find a way of keeping some social interaction, whether that is during better times going to a coffee shop or whatever to work from, or in these times being able to have communications with people on a video stream and keep the conversation open.
Yeah, I think, with the current times, more people are live streaming. I've literally just checked my emails, and I got 12 emails of people going live streaming literally in the last 20 minutes. So I never usually get that. So I think it's great that more and more people are going live streaming, starting that conversation. With live streaming, I don't think you need to have all the answers. I know we don't. You've seen us mess up on, I was going to use the F word, but I'm not, mess up on many live streams, but it's just about kind of starting that conversation. And I think that's important, and then people feel that there's a bit of a community out there. Well, with things like Zoom or Hangouts, you can get multiple people talking, because I know with a stream it's verbally, it's more people that are just doing the streaming, but in the chat you can write and you can get engaged. And I am looking at some options into where we can bring people we know into the live stream just for like 5-10 minutes or whatever they're comfortable with. And so we are looking into options like that. Andrew's going to help me spec up a streaming machine later today or over the weekend, so we'll see. Next day delivery, yes. No money.
So back to the tips momentarily. So the next tip I think I would say, I don't know if it's number 4, and it's probably number 3, is your schedule for the day.
Yeah,
it's very difficult, I think, when you're working from home to differentiate between work and home. Certainly something I still at times struggle with, and you'll see me working from 6 a.m. through to midnight sometimes. But at the same time, I think it's very important to at least give yourself time in the day for a couple of breaks to sit down, whether it's in the living room, watch TV for half an hour over your lunch or something. Obviously have lunch while you're doing that. Imagine you're at school, I suppose, is perhaps the way to think about it. At school, you'd have a morning break, you'd have a lunch break, and if you're perhaps a private school, you might even have an afternoon break as well. So, yeah, give yourself an opportunity to have sort of 15, 20-minute breaks a couple of times a day, and a decent sort of 30, 45-minute break for lunch. If you need to, set yourself an alarm. I did do that for a while. I had an alarm running, and that made me a bit more regimented to doing things. But I found it wasn't great for me when I needed to focus on something. I'd suddenly get this alarm go off telling me to stop, and I was thinking, oh, I need to get this finished. So I stopped using that. But I do certainly make sure that between sort of 1:30, tools down, go to the kitchen, sort some food out, go to the living room, sit down in there, just disconnect from all communication, because again, and that's probably the next tip, is the communication side, but it's important to have communication, but it's also important to break away from it, because like with social media, I think everyone spends a lot of time looking at their phones going, oh, waiting for the next tweet coming. Has anyone seen this yet? Are there any answers to this question? You spend your life starting to look at phones and things, but you need to disconnect from that world sometimes. So I think that's important. But yeah, communication tools. What would be your tips around communication and keeping in contact, Eddie?
Yeah, before I get into that, I know Venkatesh has given some suggestions on that as well. So I'm just going to kind of read out his comment. He says, for the past week, him and his colleagues have been working from home, which I think is the majority of people have started going last week from home. And the upcoming week is completely from home as well. So that's really cool. So that'll be 2 weeks. I'm guessing you probably get another 3rd or 4th week after that, depending on how things go. So, and how are you finding it, Venkatesh? Are you enjoying working from home? If you had the choice, would you continue next week from home, or would you go in, or would you prefer half and half? What's your ideal situation? And then he talked, and he says it's a new experience for him. He hasn't done it from work from home for this long. So that'd be interesting to know. So maybe you can't answer that yet. Maybe you don't know if it's something you would like to do more or not. I think maybe it's one of those things where it's a novelty now. It feels new, it feels exciting, but maybe in a month's time you're like, look, I need to go into the office. I think that's where, in an ideal world, we have the balance. Like Andrew and me usually do 4 days from home and go in 1 or 2 days, depending on events or meetings, etc., and so forth. So I think that should be the best ideal for everybody. And then Andrew raises a good point, and it ties in with Venkatesh's other comment about tools. I think tools are really important. Andrew and me are always on Slack with our teams, and we chat, and I have different Slack kind of groups for different projects, and therefore you can mute some if you're not working on that project, you're working with a different client, or however it works in your setup. I think that's great. I do not use WhatsApp for work because you're going to have like 5 or 10 chats for each kind of project or group of people, and then you can't go through and mute all those and all the rest. So Slack works really well in that sense. Or something like Discord, I think does it well too. I haven't used that in anger. And Google Meet is really useful. I used Microsoft Teams today for a call for the first time ever. Does not work in Safari. And I had to register to use it, so I just sent them an email and just said, can we just use Google Meet? So we use Google Meet instead. The interesting, funny thing is, though, they created this chat room, or however you want to call this video call, and the first one didn't work. 2 of us got in, or 2 went in, and 1 couldn't, and then I couldn't because I didn't want to log in and make an account. Sorry. But then after the 3rd link, where a different person who has an account on Microsoft Meet, the quality did look. Actually, I did get in eventually. I should tell a lie. I'm trying to remember now. I had so many calls today. I did get in, and it was like the 3rd or 4th link. But the interesting thing was the quality was very good. I was really impressed with the video quality on my big 5K screen. The video quality was impressive. But it did take 3 to 4 attempts to actually get everybody into that room. So that was kind of a bit weird. But yeah, that was interesting. I couldn't figure out when I clicked on my face to try and make it bigger. It then switched. It circled through my cameras. So it went on the camera that had a lens cap on it, sorry. So everyone's like, oh, I just see black. And I was like, clicked on it. And I saw the green lights along my cameras just turn on. And I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. So I thought that was a bit weird. Didn't get a menu, didn't get anything. It just kind of cycled through. But then on Google Meet today, I had the weird thing is where I have 3 screens or 4 screens, if you've seen, as you saw. It shares the screen where the window is on. So if I want to share this screen, I need to move the Google Meet call now. Whereas before you could select which screen you wanted. Now I need to move it to the correct screen and then do the screen share. And that was really weird. So I think a lot of these tools can be improved. I think Slack actually has it really well. It's a bit resource hungry and bandwidth hungry, but yeah, Slack's got it, pretty good in terms of just, people's faces, video call, screen sharing. You can't share more than 1 screen at a time, as in I couldn't share and Andrew couldn't share at the same time, which makes sense. You wouldn't really look at 2 screens, I suppose. So yeah, that's the tools really I think that you need. And of course, GitHub. Of course. Andrew's got some other ideas, I'm sure.
Well, I'm just thinking you're focusing very much again on that IT influence. I think in the IT world and in a team environment where you've got a team, Slack is fantastic, because certainly Slack has really good tooling when it comes to sharing code, and just generally it's quite a geeky platform to use. WhatsApp, I agree. I'm not a fan of WhatsApp at all. I think people need to stop using WhatsApp when it comes to business stuff. I get that for some people it's convenient because they know their phone number, and if they've got WhatsApp installed, they can just send them a message on WhatsApp. But then why not just send them a normal SMS message if you're going to start doing that? You can set up groups on most message services now anyhow. So I don't see a real need for WhatsApp. The other one that is quite popular, mostly when you're talking to sort of the business, the clients, is Zoom as well. I think whilst Zoom has got some vulnerabilities too, it's so popular for businesses and for the more private conversations you want to have, that that's probably another tool you want to look at getting set up. And then Google Meet, great for that balance in between where you want to just have a quick conversation with people you don't really know. It's perhaps the first time you've spoken, you haven't really agreed what tools you're going to use going forward. Google Meet is a nice kind of middle ground for doing those things with.
Yeah, that's true. So what other topics do we have? So we talk about kind of tips on how to kind of set your environment up. What you mentioned about setting timers and stuff is really good. I think it's important to make sure you don't just live and breathe work. But then other people on the flip side, apparently, from what I see on Twitter, never do any work. As in they're like, oh, I can't do any work. I've got the washing to do. I've got this to do. I've got that to do. And I just think, for me, it works out really well because I find I do a piece of work. Once I'm happy, I try and go and do something for 10, 15 minutes, just let things sort itself out in my mind, come back, look at it, review it myself, and then kind of commit it and push it up. But I guess you could get distracted on both sides, and I have had it where I'm coding, I'm stuck, and I just spend 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, and just don't end up getting up from my chair. Or vice versa. I haven't had this, but I appreciate some people might have this, doing something in the house, like doing the washing, and then and then they go, oh, I got to do the dishes, oh, I got to do this, got to do that, and it just escalates. So I do understand. So I think you need discipline on both sides, like everything, it's balance. Exercise is really bad for me though.
It's that mental health part, right? It's that mental health thing. Some people are really kind of concerned about making sure their house is in a good state all the time, and some people are less worried about that. I think that there's a mental health element to working from home. I'm no mental health expert, so I can't really give advice in that sense. But obviously, you've got to sort of prioritize things based around what makes you comfortable. I think that's the key part there. Similar to what we said at the beginning, you give yourself a comfortable space to work from. But if you've not got the right state of mind when you're at home, you're not going to be able to work from home anyway. So I think that's the first thing, is to figure out what your priorities are. Write them down again. I mean, for me, washing is quite low on the list. If there's a big pile of it, then I'll probably have a blast through and get it all done in a day anyway. But figure out those priorities. If for you washing is up on that list, number one, then get on top of the washing, get that sorted out, and then it should become a much more maintainable thing. So during that, one of those 20-minute breaks, you can swap it all over and sort that out. But I think that's the key for me, is if you're working from home, you've got to have the right state of mind. If you can't get into the right state of mind, you need to start figuring out priorities on that, on what is going to get you that state of mind. And you can tweak that around. Again, those priorities might change. Perhaps put some Post-it notes on the wall. I have stacks of that's probably one of the biggest tips, actually, is invest heavily in Post-it notes, because you will use them a lot when you're working from home. I have Post-it notes here with things like measurements on them. And
me too.
yeah, so invest in Post-it notes. I keep a watch of them right next to me. So
I have like a stack as well.
Here and here. So yeah, the cupboard full of them. So Post-it notes, I think, is really useful. And yeah, that might be one way of prioritizing stuff. Write them down. Spend 20 minutes writing them down on Post-it notes. These are the important things to me. Stick them on a wall somewhere and rejig them around on the wall as you think, actually, no, this is a high priority, really. Start learning where your priorities are and use that wall as a list. And when something new comes up, you can have another Post-it note to it and figure out where it sits. And that, for me, is probably a really useful tip for working from home, is figure out your priorities, invest in Post-it notes.
We should buy shares in Post-it notes.
I was about to say we should have bought shares before we gave that advice out.
We should have bought shares like 10 years ago when we started like literally eating Post-it notes to go through like a pack a week or something. So yeah, that's a really good tip. I wanted to mention, sorry, I can't even speak. It's been a long week. You mentioned mental health. I also want to talk about kind of just health in general, not food, but like exercise. I know from my Apple Watch, turn it that way, that when I'm at home, oh my God, do I like not move? Literally just sit in this chair in my command center and barely move. I've got a gym in the house and I have no excuse, but it's upstairs. So I'm too lazy to go up.
Shall we compare notes on our activity for the day? I can show you mine. I don't know how I can get it on the screen.
You mean on the watch?
Yeah, so I'm 187% on the move, 740% on the exercise, and 91 on the stand. So I've obviously been out doing far too much today.
I'm lucky if I pass like 30%. Stand, I'm pretty good, but exercise and move, like you can't see it, but they're gonna focus. I can't do it. I can't bend that way. But yeah, it's I suck. I am going to get better, I think. Now with the wife being more from home, and she's going to definitely do her exercises twice a day, then I'm going to hopefully join her for a little bit. Even if I do like 20 minutes just to get up and about, because, if this shit gets even worse, I can't freaking run 20 meters down to shops. So, I need to just definitely get fitter. Okay, forget running. Can't even walk. I drive so bad. That's true. I think also, what about like taking calls? I know, Andrew, you take calls sometimes on the bike. So you're you're doing a video call, or maybe just an audio call with the team, and you don't need to be in front of your computer. Then you do it on the bike. And I think that's really good.
Yes, I've got the exercise bike, and I showed it a minute ago. If anyone has just joined, the useful thing there is the wireless keyboard. So I can take that keyboard. I can drop that onto the face of the exercise bike, and just pressing the M button will mute things. So I think that's an important tip for anyone that's doing more and more video calls. make sure when you're not talking to mute yourself,
Yes.
because that's one thing that does get a little bit annoying when you're working remotely and 3 or 4 people that are in the office haven't muted themselves. You hear all the office background noise whilst the people working from home are generally being quite quiet. But yeah, general tip anywhere, if you're using video conferencing stuff and you're not the one that's talking, mute yourself. But that's why I take the keyboard with me. I take the wireless keyboard over to the bike. I can just tap that M button. And likewise, if I want to turn the video off, and I can tap the V button. But yeah, if you are going to be on the exercise bike doing stuff, don't push it to the extreme. You don't want to be sat there huffing and puffing away whilst you're trying to talk to people.
That's very true. I actually just started writing a tweet about that because I think that's golden. My tweet's probably going to say something along the lines of, have some respect for your team, mute yourself when you're not talking. It just really bugs me. You can see who the lazy motherfuckers are. They're sitting there like this. I can't hear shit. It's fun. Well, I can hear it. You should hear it too. And it's like, no. So it's usually the old management people. They just have no clue. They don't figure out the mute button. But when they want to talk, they're always freaking muted. It's like, unmute yourself. Yeah, when there's noise, they don't. They're all fired. That's what I do. Seriously, I just fire them all. So if you can't figure out the mute button, you shouldn't be working. You should go lie down before you hurt yourself. Hot tip. But yeah, the muting is quite important. I've just made a note for a tweet for later on today. I think it's quite funny. Thank you, Andrew.
There's lots of things like this, I guess, as you start going, that you start to just do naturally as well. So some things might feel unnatural as you start doing them, but you do them more and more and it become natural. But you're right, that comes back to that kind of longevity of how long are you doing it for. If you only do it for a week, it's not really enough time to get used to things. You're still in that honeymoon phase of, oh, this is all exciting. I'm at home and I can go play some computer games or whatever it is. And yeah, I think that sort of first 1 to 2 weeks is a real struggle to give yourself that kind of mental, right, I'm going to work now. And I think that's probably one of the things that businesses are finding difficult as people start doing this is how do I know that my staff are working? So they might start trying to enforce additional things on you. Say, well, you need to check in with me every 10 minutes or something. And that's not very efficient either. So I think you have to accept that as you start doing this, people are going to probably, I wouldn't say take the piss, but that's probably the right phrase to use, is they will take the piss a bit. I'm at home, great, I'm just going to chill out. And I'll use a few excuses like, oh, my internet's not working, or this is happening.
Do you think so?
All these things, but I think that first 1 to 2 weeks, it's a mix. I think there will be a lot. There'll be half the people will probably be really good. They'll want to show that they can work from home. Half the people will think, you know what, I'm at home, I'm going to do my own thing, and no one really knows what I'm doing. But it comes to light quite quickly. That's why I think it only lasts a week or two, because quite quickly it comes to light. People start saying, oh, this person, I haven't seen much output from them. What are they up to? And do you want to be called out in that way? Probably not. So that's when you start to think, I need to sort myself out now. I need to get myself in order. And then you might end up working to the other extreme of working 12 to 18 hours a day to try and get yourself into that state. So you sort of have this up and down yo-yo effect of trying to balance things out and figure out.
It's a bit like story pointing, right? With the team, you kind of starts ebbs and flows like massive, and then eventually kind of gets a bit closer and closer, even off. But I think the reason why I say, do you really think that is because with saving travel time, say like on average 2 hours a day, then that's 2 hours extra to do your own thing and all the rest. So I think people will appreciate the extra 2 hours, the saving in cost as well, because it's quite expensive to travel to work in most countries, or maybe just UK. But I think in a lot of countries it's quite expensive to travel. So, but you're right. I think the novelty might naturally sway one way rather than the other for different people.
Yeah, and travel, even if you are traveling and it's cheap as such, it's not so much a cost thing. It's actually being able to work while you're traveling, because most places, public transport, you're either standing or you're in a seat where in front of you, there's no way you can hold a laptop anyway because there's not enough space. So you can't really work when you're in transit unless you do pay a lot of money to, let's say, have a first class seat or something with a table, whatever it is that allows you to work. So that again cycles back to the costing, but you are wasting a lot of time in your day. Absolutely. I mean, when I have trips into London, that's 4 hours almost of my day of traveling. I tend to end up paying to be able to work while I do that because I find it is quite wasteful. Or if I'm not paying the extra to work, I will take an iPad or something that allows me to work from it. But again, you have to have invested yourself in having one of those iPads to do that. So I find ways to try and be efficient when I'm traveling, but the less you travel, the more you can invest, as you say, to things you're doing at home, to just generally working extra hours, whatever it is. So I think the benefits do start to suddenly come to the forefront and people start to realize it. But in a couple of weeks, you won't. So it's going to be a very interesting period right now where potentially it's going to be, say, 1 to 3 months where a lot of people are going to be working from home. So I think after the first month, people have probably started to figure things out, and they'll be sort of leveling things off, let's say, hitting that even scale of balancing out how much do I work, how much do I play, let's say. And then they'll have 2 months of getting even more familiar and refining that to the point here.
Okay, no, sorry, I knocked something on the keyboard. Okay, damn it, you missed all my screaming. Can't replicate that again. You missed it all. Thank you, Venkatesh, for pointing that out. I didn't realize I pressed that on the keyboard. Got too excited. I don't know what the last thing that got heard was, but I joined a call.
Yeah, we're talking about the quick talk anyway. That's what you got excited about.
Yes, now it's all
a quick talk that was a meeting for an hour in your calendar.
Yes, but the calendar invite said quick talk, and so I declined it. But Venkatesh, thanks again.
Being remote, you can do that a bit. When you're in an office and someone walks up to you face to face to say that, it's very difficult to say, no, I'm not going to talk to you. Whereas remotely, again, you feel a bit more empowered, I think. Not to be an arsehole. You're not there but you're there to think, actually, I can be a bit more pragmatic now. I think you do become more pragmatic when you start working from home. You start to say no to things that aren't so important. You learn an awful lot when it comes to those activities. And when you go back to an office environment, you notice them so much more again. So that's going to be very interesting for those people that spend the next couple of months working from home and they go back to an office again in a couple of months from now. One thing I'd say to you is pay a little bit more attention when you go back in, see how many things are distracting you. And then report them back. Tell us what did you see? What do you feel now is an overhead is going into the office that you wish you didn't have to do?
Travel time and distractions are going to be the biggest ones. I joined a call yesterday. Not call. I joined a live stream yesterday. So I wasn't doing the live stream. I actually joined another one, and it was how to manage your developers while working remotely. And so I joined, and the first thing they said was, use Jira, it's amazing. I'm like, oh my word, this is me having another rant, but seriously, freaking Jira. And so I put in the comment, it'd be great if you could have a live stream on how to manage, as a developer, how to manage developers for wasting your, as a developer, how to manage the manager for wasting your time. Wow, I think the person was not impressed. But it's, the manager's usually the one that's doing the distraction. That's why I think if it's a project manager, if there's any project managers listening, I'm sorry. No, I'm not. Fuck you. It's more of a scrum master. I think it's important, someone who helps facilitate the team to be efficient, to remove blockers, rather than, so they're more at the front, kind of trying to pull people along and move things out of the way. It's a really good cartoon that demonstrates that for the scrum master, whereas with a project manager, they're behind the team and they're whipping them. This is what the cartoon was doing, kind of work harder, just kind of work harder, work through the night. I don't care, don't get lunch. So project manager is very, very different.
It's back to that trust thing as well, right? Because if you hire someone, then why are you hiring them if you're not going to trust them to get the job done?
Exactly.
So you've made a mistake in the first place hiring them if you're going to then be wanting to manage them just because you can't see them. You should better trust them. Sure, as I said, those first few weeks, they probably will be not so great with the output. Again, I don't know what the exact ratio is. I'm going to say 50-50. but there will be people that will take the piss of it when they start working from home. But allow them to do that. I think quite quickly that will change, and that the attitude comes back round to, I want to be productive now. I'm bored, but I've done everything there is to do. And if after I'm still retrospective, 2 weeks in, do a retrospective with people and ask the questions: how are you finding being able to work? Are there things that are distracting you that you would like to discuss with us? Yeah, talk to people a bit, but don't sit there watching them.
Yeah, I agree. I think Andrew's right. You need to be able to talk to people, but don't try to micromanage them. I mean, Gary Vee says, "Hiring is guessing, firing is knowing." And there is, hiring people, you don't know them. Everyone on the interview, on both sides, even if I go to look at a project or a contract or a client, sometimes they lie and try and make out themselves in the best light. Oh yes, we do this and we do this, and you kind of join that company. They don't do any of those good practice things. They literally do all the bad stuff. So in the swings and roundabouts, your candidate obviously wants to give themselves in the best light. So an interview is two ways. Definitely going to make that clear. But everyone's on their best behavior. So it's until you've worked at a company, or if you look from the company's point of view, someone's worked there for 3 months, really, you're not going to know. And you've got to, like Andrew says, you've got to give that flexibility and leeway for people to find their feet. And I think that's definitely important. So that's a really good point. Our time, we've probably got like 10 minutes left, Andrew. What else do we want to cover? Anything comes to mind? Anyone watching, what would you like to cover? I mean, we've been talking about our experiences, and we've had some people write in the comments. Thank you, Venkatesh, for talking about their experiences. Anyone else? What tips would you give? What challenges do you have? What questions do you have? And we can always have a follow-up session. We can gather the questions. We'll hopefully chat about them now, about the tips and challenges and all the stuff that you have. But if we don't, we can gather them, and we can go through them in the future. We can also get other people on the call, especially in a few weeks when people have done it. It'd be really interesting to know. Maybe we've got two TV screens here, one there and one that way. Hey, I pointed the right way to Andrew, that way. And it would be interesting to see how people have got on and get other people's feedback and so forth. So, but do feel free to write in the chat now, and it will be good. Like I said, I know there's a lot of live streamers, got like 5 more emails with like more people going live streaming. I think it's great that live streaming is really taking off. I think that's brilliant. So if you're watching, let us know your live stream time and where it is, YouTube, Twitch, whatever, and we look forward to coming in and engaging in your live streams too. I think it's good to see people share their experiences.
What we should have done is I should have taken some of these post-it notes and put them on the screen behind.
Can you do that?
We could have listed together what the different what we think the priorities are for things.
You can, but it'll be blurred and it won't be readable.
Yeah, it's probably not great. But I just thought, as you said, we're coming to the end as such of this stream. I've got 5 things that I've noted down on my post-it note here as we were talking, that I thought were probably the 5, to me, resonated the 5 most useful things. I don't know if you picked up 5 things during the talk, but I'll go through what I listed off. So having your own space, a quiet space to work from. These are in no priority order, but monitors, making sure you've got, certainly if you're involved in IT or anything else, you've got the right amount of screen estate to be able to be efficient with. Post-it notes, these things. Really, I don't think I could have survived doing most of the work I do without having a large collection of post-it notes. I really should have bought shares, as Eddie said a few years ago. Communication tools, figure out what the best way of communicating is, have a chat with your team, and not just your team, but also your clients and your stakeholders. Make sure that you've got ways of communicating with both of them. Slack is a great way if you can get just to a single tool. I'd certainly recommend Slack as my number one. Zoom, just because of its high popularity, is very good. It's not bad when it comes to being able to invite people to join. Certainly those that haven't got Slack installed and don't want to go through registering with Slack, you don't need to do any of that. Or Meet, then for somewhere in between where you're trying to understand things, Google Meet is good. And then the last one was get yourself a schedule set up. Figure out what time are you going to have as me time during the day. When are you going to start your day? if you've got kids and so forth, you need to get them to school still. So your day probably starts once you've dropped them all off and you get back home. You're then going to have to pick them up at some point, say about sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So chances are you're then going to stop at about 2:30 when you're working from home until sort of 5, 6 o'clock when things are settled. And then you'll probably work again from, I don't know, say 6 or 8 o'clock in the evening for a few hours to finish your day off. So it becomes a bit more of a broken day. So you might need to let people know about that, but just come up with a schedule that works best for you, that gives you a good balance between your work and your home life to keep that mental health. And as Eddie says, part of that schedule, try and work in some exercise routine, going out for a walk. One of the reasons we've got a dog is so that it forces us to go out for a walk during the day, just take the dog out. Otherwise he gets a bit frustrated. So yeah, those are, I think, the 5 things. So have your own space, the right real estate when it comes to monitors for working on it at a computer with, post-it notes for keeping yourself a list of all the things you have to do and prioritizing those, working out how you're going to communicate with the people you have to work with, and then setting yourself a schedule. They're my 5 tips. Eddie, is there anything else for you that I didn't mention that you'd want to see on that list?
I think you covered them really well. I'm glad you made notes, but I think you covered them really well. Anything new? No. I mean, we've worked together for so long remotely that I think we've got this balance, which is good. So I have extra screens so I can break things faster, so Andrew can come and fix it. Basically, that's really it. I've got to keep him busy, so I've got to keep him out of trouble. So no, I think you covered that really well, and I'd say thanks for everyone for joining. If you have any topics about what you would like us to talk about or to start the conversation, because again, we're happy to share our experiences, but by all means, we don't have all the answers, and we'd love to just start that conversation. And if anyone wants to be on one of our streams with us, we can send us a message and we can maybe organize that. And let's see, with the next few weeks working from home, we're hopefully going to do more live streams. What time of day and evening, and so what time of day and what days work better for you as well, let us know. It'd be interesting to know, is this sort of time good for you? And yeah, I think I really enjoyed the chat. It made me think about certain things. I'm going to try and go to the gym for gym in the house, not like gym because it's closed in the UK, but just to at least 20 minutes just to do something, because how many steps have I got? Let me check. Do you want to have a guess how many steps I've got? Andrew, how many have you got?
How many steps have I done today?
Yeah.
Ooh. You sure you want to know?
Go on, tell me.
16,154 I'm at.
16,000. You have been out.
You think right? I can't screen share it, but
you have been
put it
out.
Upside down.
No, let's just to clarify though. Andrew has been out. So this is an example of Andrew being out, and this is an example of I haven't been out today. I've been just sitting here all day. And do you want to have a guess what you think my steps are? On a bad day. Imagine a bad day where you haven't really done much.
I'll say you've done 1,500.
You're not far off. I've done a little bit more than that. But
10th of what I've done.
It's like I've done 2,000, which is shocking. It's so unhealthy. It's 7 o'clock in the evening here, so it's dinner time and then probably bed. So yeah, that's really bad. So I think it's important. And what's the average you're meant to do, steps wise, for
I think they recommend you should do about 10,000.
I thought it was about 10,000. Yeah.
10 to 12,000. I think is kind of the recommended minimum or average you should do on a day. But yeah, if you can do more than that, I think that's good. But again, you've got to find that work-life balance, right? 16,000 steps. I've probably not done as much work as such today, mostly because I've got a day off anyway. Yeah. That's partly why. Apart from doing this evening, I have had largely a day off today. But yeah, you're right. On a day when I'm working from home, it probably is more in the 6,000 to 8,000 is what it happens, where it is a bit below average. I should work a little bit more on increasing that. But that's why I have days like today where I get out and do more.
Yeah, so by the end of tonight, by the time I go to bed, I've probably done 25% of what the recommended amount is, which is ridiculous. It's not like 75% where you're almost there, you've done the majority of it. I'm well under it. So I think it's just important, and it's something I've been doing this for 6 years, so I need to get a lot better at improvement. I did start off really well with Best Endeavours, and now I just get distracted with, social media, not socials, but social media and coding and various projects and all the rest. So thank you, Tess. Thank you very much for the great feedback and thumbs up. And I think we will call it a day there, and we will see you all soon. We are doing a stream on Monday. We are doing an
We
Angular
are.
fourth session. What are we covering, Andrew?
We're going to be doing things to do with communicating with APIs and services with Angular. And I think we're also going to, at some point, try and squeeze in a stream about how to set up a streaming environment as well, right?
Yeah, would that be useful people for people? It'd be interesting to know. Would you like to know how we do these streams? How we put the TV kind of here, TV over there, and put us in that? I mean, you saw briefly earlier on Andrew's green screen. Is that something you'd like to see? Let us know, in the chat now or in the comments afterwards. It'd be interesting to see. I think a lot of people are doing more live streaming. It'd be really good, I think, to share that. So we can. I just love seeing more and more people live stream. Subscribe to so many people on Twitch and YouTube. And if I haven't subscribed to you and you do plan to put out videos and live streams, let me know. I will subscribe to your channel now. Yes. Venkatesh says yes. If you'd like to know how we do that, okay, yeah, we can. You can do it for free using whatever computer you've got now. You can use something called OBS, but we will go into more details on how to do that. And then you can do things. I mean, in the background, or you can do things like live. So if you can see that I can kind of get a bite, walk across the screen. Look at that. He walks around the iMac Pro, jumps on the keyboards, and then kind of sits in the chair, and then maybe jumps along here. I should have Mario sound effects. Whee! And kind of sits over there. So there are various things you can do, and you can have all these scenes all set up and everything else. So yeah, we can talk about that and how straightforward it actually is. Awesome, Andrew. Shall we leave everyone in peace and wish them all the best in their working from home?
Absolutely. No, thank you for watching. Hopefully you had picked up a few useful tips from us and what we've experienced over the last 6 to 8 years. But really, it's not that daunting, I think, is the overall summary. I think it's just you have to just take a little bit of time and find your rhythm, I suppose, as the final point I would make is find your rhythm.
Yes, do that. So enjoy working from home. Next time we see you, even though the stream on Monday is about Angular, we'd love to just hear how your working from home's going. Hopefully you've enjoyed your weekend and you won't be doing too much working from home in the next 2 days. And we will see you Monday at 6:30 UK time. So I'll put that in the chat. 6:30
Awesome.
UK time. Angular. Monday. Cool. We will see you all then.
Have a good weekend.
Enjoy your weekend.
See you Monday.
And be safe.
Yes. Stay safe. Try and keep that 2 meter distance from anyone else. Lock your doors, lock your windows.
And wear that Darth Vader mask.